Youssef was a simple man living in a quiet village surrounded by dense forests. His only source of livelihood was collecting firewood from the forest and selling it in the market to provide for himself and his children. Despite the simplicity of his home and the hardship of his circumstances, he was known among the villagers for his honesty and integrity. Youssef was never a man to accept injustice or deceit. Everyone trusted and respected him. Every morning, Youssef would wake up at dawn, drink a simple cup of tea, then take his axe and head into the forest. He would spend long hours chopping wood, carrying it on his back, and then walking long distances to reach the market. The work was exhausting, but he endured it with patience and faith. One day, as he was returning from the forest after a tiring day, he noticed a small bag lying on the side of the road. Youssef stopped, placed the firewood on the ground, and bent down to see what was inside. He opened the bag and found enough money to change his life for a long time. He was overwhelmed with surprise, but quickly regained his composure and began thinking about what he should do. He looked around, searching for someone who might be looking for the bag, but the road was completely empty. A feeling of unease took hold of him, but he remembered his principles and honesty. He decided to return to the village immediately to find the owner of the bag. Carrying both the firewood and the bag, he walked back with steady steps. When he arrived at the market, he began asking people if anyone had lost money. Some were astonished by his honesty, while others looked at him in disbelief, wondering why he didn't keep it for himself. Youssef ignored all of that and continued his search until he found an old man who looked sad. He approached him and asked about his condition. The old man sighed and said he had lost a bag containing all his savings. When Youssef heard this, he took out the bag and handed it to the man. The old man looked at him with teary eyes, unable to believe that such honesty still existed. He tried to give Youssef a portion of the money as a reward, but Youssef firmly refused, saying he sought only God's approval. Youssef returned home exhausted but at peace. He sat with his children, eating a simple meal, telling them about the importance of honesty and integrity in life, even when facing the toughest circumstances. The next morning, he woke up as usual, drank his simple cup of tea, took his axe and basket, and set out for the forest. He spent long hours gathering firewood, moving between the trees, carefully cutting dry branches. After collecting enough, he tied the wood with a strong rope, carried it on his back, and began his journey home. Suddenly, he noticed thick smoke rising in the distance. He paused for a moment, placed the firewood on the ground, and tried to understand what was happening. The smell indicated a large fire. Youssef quickly rushed toward the source of the smoke. As he got closer, the scene became clearer. A large field full of crops had caught fire. There was no one around, and the flames were spreading rapidly. Without hesitation, he threw aside the firewood and ran toward the field, knowing that any delay could lead to disaster. He found a water bucket near a small well, grabbed it, and began pouring water over the flames with all his strength. He used everything he could find, water buckets, dirt, and even tree branches, to try to control the fire. Though the smoke was suffocating, he did not stop. After great effort, he managed to slow the spread of the fire and put out most of it. The villagers started arriving after noticing the smoke. They expected to find the field completely burned, but to their surprise, most of the fire had been extinguished. The field's owner, an elderly man well known among the villagers, approached Youssef gratefully, unable to express his appreciation. With a trembling voice, he said, "You saved my livelihood and my family's sustenance. I don't know how to repay you." Despite his exhaustion, Youssef smiled and said calmly, "It was my duty. Doing good needs no reward." The man tried to offer him money or food, but Youssef politely declined. The villagers began speaking of Youssef's courage and generosity, seeing him as a symbol of humanity and kindness. Yet he returned to his simple life unchanged by their praise. Youssef's story spread quickly throughout the village, eventually reaching a wealthy man who lived on its outskirts. This man had been searching for trustworthy individuals to work for him, but had lost faith in people. When he heard about Youssef, he decided to test him himself. He instructed one of his assistants to leave a bag full of gold on Youssef's usual path to the forest. The next morning, as Youssef walked his usual route, his eyes caught sight of the bag lying on the side of the road. He stopped, carefully picked it up, and looked around, but saw no one. After thinking for a moment, he decided to return to the village to find its owner. He began asking around the market without even opening the bag. Suddenly, the wealthy man emerged angrily from the crowd and accused Youssef of stealing the gold. In a loud voice, he said, "I have been watching you. You should have returned it to me immediately, but you delayed." Youssef was shocked by the accusation and tried to defend himself, but the man refused to listen. People gathered around them, divided between those who believed in Youssef's honesty and those who doubted him. Then, the village elder intervened and suggested that they open the bag in front of everyone. When the bag was opened, the surprise was that the gold was still intact, not a single piece missing. The wealthy man stood speechless, feeling ashamed of his false accusation. He stepped closer to Youssef and said in a quiet voice, "I was testing you, but I misjudged you. You truly are an honorable man." Youssef looked at him and firmly replied, "There is no need for tests. Honesty is shown through actions, not words." But the story didn't end there. That night, the wealthy man's treasury was stolen, and all the evidence pointed to Youssef. Rumors spread, and despite everything he had done, people began to doubt him. Now, Youssef found himself trapped by a serious accusation, and he had to find a way to prove his innocence. Would he uncover the truth, or would this conspiracy change his life forever?